Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What They Don't Say. Today, we're going to be diving into a conversation that's going to challenge the narratives that have been spun by sensationalism. And we're going to redirect the focus where it rightfully belongs, on the survivors. Because today, we will be interviewing a Jeffrey Epstein survivor. But more importantly, her name, the name of the person he assaulted, one of many, is Jess Michaels. Let's address this elephant in the room. When you hear the name Jeffrey Epstein, what do you think? Do you think Epstein Island? Do you think billionaire? Perhaps you think about the magnitude at which he was able to assault so many underage girls and women for many years and somehow get away with it. But Epstein is a symbol of depravity and abuse, and somehow we've managed to etch his name in infamy. Epstein has been glorified in headlines, and not because of what he's done, but we're constantly seeing Epstein's names in headlines. But what about the survivors? What about all of those women's lives that he destroyed at a young age simply out of his own pleasure? We should be boosting the names of the survivors, not the name of the perpetrator. And that's what we're going to do today. We are going to have a conversation with Jess Michaels, who, when she was 22 years old, she was living the dream in New York City. She was a professional dancer, and at age 22, Epstein raped her. It took her 27 years of not knowing what was wrong in her life, why she was having such a hard time. And one day she woke up and she saw Epstein's face, and she realized, I'm not alone. It wasn't my fault. I know what happened to me. I was raped. Jess is so much more than a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. She is a founder. She's an advocate. She is a survivor. She's done a TED Talk. But most importantly, she's using her voice and her platform to empower others. You're going to hear a bit about it today, but she's developed a sexual assault first aid skill and emergency safety protocol to be able to empower others. We're always talking about how to prevent something, how to prevent tragedy, how to prepare, but we're never talking about what happens when it does happen to you. What are the next steps after that? Jess is going to outline that for us today. We're not going to be dissecting the details of the crimes because that is not the important part. The important part is who Jess Michaels is. And she said it best in her TED Talk. It's not special or unique that it was Jeffrey Epstein. My story is just easier to hear because it was Jeffrey Epstein. And I want you to really sit with that for a minute, because Jeffrey Epstein is not special. His status did enable him to assault more women at a faster rate, but at the end of the day, he was a really bad sex offender, the same way that every sex offender is a really bad one. So you may have clicked on this episode because you saw the title Jeffrey Epstein, but this is not about Jeffrey Epstein. This episode is about Jess Michaels. Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for being on. We're so excited to have you today.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm really happy to be here. Honored to be invited.
So to start, we just wanted you to give us a bit of a glimpse of your life. Maybe you could share your story and just give us an idea of really who you are and what you're doing now.
So when you ask me who am I, I'm a dancer. That's my heart, that's my soul. That's where I found out who I was. I started late in life, but I was so passionate about it. And as I learned, I had a natural ability for it. So I studied for a relatively short period of time, and then I went to New York and I became a professional, and I was really successful very fast. I then went on to teach after that. My heart and soul is in educating young people. I love being a part of young people's lives. And so the reason we're here, there's a couple reasons why it's so important for me to be here, and I'm so excited to be here with both of you, is because what happened to me happened at 22. And it happened when I was at the start of my life, when things were on this really fast, successful escalation to really being successful in my industry as a dancer, singer, and actress. And then I was raped. And that tainted my whole life after that. And that's why I think it's really important to talk now that I can, because I have thousands of dancers that I've taught, girls I've known since they were 3 years old. And I never talked about this. I never shared about it. I never could. And so I was only able to share about it when the person that had assaulted me had become public. And
Mhm.
I learned that other people had been assaulted. On July 9th, 1991, I was raped at 22 years old by Jeffrey Epstein. I am one of the earliest publicly known survivors. There are others that were assaulted earlier than I was. I haven't met any of them and I haven't heard them coming forward. And no one has to. But for me, as someone that had so much taken from me and who has been educating children for 25 years, I could not live with myself if I didn't start changing something in this conversation and making an effort to share my story so that I could help in some way, not only protect future generations, but do something that was going to change this conversation. Just like you guys. Shannon and Lauren, I want to tell you something about you. And I have so much respect for what you are doing. I have so much respect and admiration for Gen Z in how clever and brave and informed and wise your generation is. Um, I feel like it's going to be you guys that make the difference. And so all I want to do is come in as this elder Gen X and go, hey, let's thank you for having me on and letting me talk about this because we couldn't do that in my generation. We couldn't do that. And you are giving me this opportunity to talk about it in a way that was never available to me before.
You are the sweetest, Jess. I feel like your generation sort of paved the way for this, though. You know, you guys might not have had necessarily the big platforms that we have today, but you guys were the first people to speak about it, right? And that's the only way that we're able to do what we do now. But oh, it's such an honor to have you on and to say that. My heart is
Oh,
melting.
you said something important though. You said about my generation first speaking out. And they did. There were women that spoke out, have been speaking out for generations. But even the laws were different. One of the reasons I blamed myself so much was because our laws said, or what I understood our laws to say at that point was, it's not rape if you didn't fight, and it was dependent on how much you resisted. And we now know that that's not true. And so logically, I'm going to say I'm a very logical person. Logically, I blamed myself because I froze. And so your generation knows, you guys know what trauma responses are. You've been through a pandemic. You have a greater understanding of mental health and how circumstances can affect that mental health. And so, yeah, bravo. I'm here for it.
Because you mentioned that whole idea of, not fighting and things like that. And, so many victims do blame themselves for like, if they didn't fight to the death. Right. And it's like, you hear in the books I've read and just like media, like, oh, well, if they didn't fight to the death, then it's not rape, like they weren't working hard enough to get them to stop, which is obviously such bullshit. And so like, how do you think you were able to work through those really messed up ideas that society had created for victims and like learn to work through and not create all that self-blame?
And I want to define something about self blame because that term, I think it's self blame, and then that's a very broad term. What self blame meant to me was that I didn't kick, I didn't scream, I didn't run out of there. I was incapable of protecting myself. Therefore, my brain went to, you, Jessica, are incapable of taking care of yourself. You are flawed. You are unreliable. You can't be trusted to take care of yourself. And so self blame went to a lack of self trust. Now imagine you're starting out in the world at 22. I mean, and I was a badass. I was not afraid of anything. I was not afraid of anything. I mean, I went to New York with $50 in my pocket to become a professional dancer. Like I was fearless. I was not afraid of the rejection because I knew I was good. And that moment of self blame that turned into a lack of self trust is what destroyed my psyche
Mm-hmm.
of who I believed I was in the world. And I went from this really brave, badass person to shriveling up. And the way I describe it is like a mouse of a woman. And I couldn't reconcile that in my brain. That's how much my psyche deteriorated. I think that, so one thing when I found out I wasn't the only one, when I read Julie K. Brown's article, Perversion of Justice, and if you haven't read it, it is a brilliant example of investigative journalism that changed lives and saved lives.
Mhm.
When I saw that there were other people that went through the same thing that I did, my first reaction was, it wasn't my fault. And the shocking thing for me was this weight that I didn't know I had been carrying for 27 years lifted instantly. When I say it was like in an instant, I'm reading through going, oh my God, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. And a level of confidence in myself came in. Now, the freeze part, even though I could understand I wasn't the only one, that was only one level of healing. When it came to the freeze part, my therapist, like, we had to go back to that over and over again because I could not understand that there were different parts of your brain that activate and also other parts that go offline. Like the defensive system in the brain, the very primitive part, activates. And when it does that, it doesn't want the confusion of the thinking part of the brain. So it shuts it down. So there's this part of our brains when we go into a frightening situation, whether we deem it frightening or just the body deems it frightening before we're even able to cognitively process it. Our ability to make decisions shuts down completely. And so it took my therapist multiple sessions. I was like, wait, you mean it's automatic? You mean, like, I could not grasp it. And she said one thing that made me grasp it. She said, Jessica, when you put your hand on a hot stove, you don't have to think about it to remove it. It just pops off. That's the defensive part of the body and the brain, the nervous system. It happens without you thinking about it because that's how the brain is built. The same thing happens when our bodies, the hand on a hot stove, when our bodies feel threatened, not when we cognitively chose to be like that it was a frightening situation, but when our bodies feel threatened, the nervous system activates that defensive part of the body. It has taken me years to internalize that knowledge and recognize I had no choice, and nobody does. So it's not even about personality. So I have had men come in my comments and are like, well, a man wouldn't do that. I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I was not afraid of anything. Even when Epstein walked in the room, I was hired as a potential backup masseuse. Like, and back in 91, you didn't need licenses. So it's not above, the idea that this couldn't happen. Like hiring a dancer, he said, I hire dancers because they know the body really well. They know how to train their athletes. They take care of themselves. And he said, well, you wouldn't go to a fat personal trainer, would you? So, yeah, he had a lot of issues. So I wasn't even afraid to ask him, why do you hire professional dancers? Like in that, and when I initially went, I wasn't even afraid to ask him. And he, soothed my fears and that concerns or asked, in that questioning. I was like, okay, that makes sense. I think that people underestimate how automatic those trauma responses are, that you don't have a choice. That's why you can't think your way out of them.
Right.
I was laying there at one point and I was like, I don't want this. This is no. And I couldn't move. But it's not like you go, oh, I'm frozen, I can't move. That's not what was going on in my head at all. And so and some people, they leave their body and go outside it. And that's why I never understood that when I would hear that, because that's not what happened to me. It's almost like my eyeballs fell back into my head and everything was really far away from my vision. I had a different experience of falling back into myself as opposed to leaving myself. My dissociation happened by disappearing within myself. I've never heard of anybody else say it that way, so it does feel like it's a little weird. But yeah, I think that the more we talk about how these trauma responses are natural, absolutely natural, and the dissociation is natural, that these are common. It is common to freeze, common,
Yeah.
um, especially for women, because we've had so many microaggressions throughout our whole lives. Many of us have not had the experience of standing up to a man and having them looking at us as an equal human.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've never done it. We have no body experience of doing that.
So how could we
Yeah.
even expect ourselves to respond in a fight sort of way in a scenario like that if we're constantly like we're not practicing that. And Lauren had mentioned in a previous episode that she wanted to try to change her fight or flight response to fight, and that she Lauren, you had activated, like, you were not you weren't boxing. What were you doing, Lauren? I can't recall.
Oh, well, yeah, my senior year of college, I was really struggling. It was like right after our whole court trial, and I was just so traumatized, and I wanted like a sense of control and power, and I didn't like how I responded in my situation. And so I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because that's all about on the ground, like on your back, learning
Yeah.
how to fight. And ever since I started doing that, there's been less general fear in my life, and it's really crazy.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you what the outcome has been, because I have the same thing, and because I had carried that fight flight. So what happens, just so that we can also be clear about something, because this is what I'm passionate about. I want people to understand, and this is part of my mission in life, is that when you're injured and you said, I want to change that fight flight, it's because our bodies are stuck. Our
Mhm.
bodies get stuck in that trauma response. And that means that for us, that the inordinate amount of stress hormones going through our bodies negatively impacts our bodies. So for me, after 27 years, negatively impacted my digestion, negatively impacted my immune system, my respiration, my cardiovascular health, my nervous system health, my endocrine system, my brain. It negatively impacted all of those things, because it was just a constant adrenaline, cortisol, adrenaline, cortisol. Adrenaline is the gas so that we fight or flight, and cortisol is the brake. Pretty soon, my body got to a point where there was no brakes anymore. My body couldn't make the brakes.
Mm.
Mhm.
So the fact that you are learning to do this, Lauren, and help shift your body, I believe very much in any kind of a somatic experience of the body learning how to respond differently when it feels threatened is very, very powerful, and amazing. So I love that you are doing that, and then you are creating safety for yourself, where
Mhm.
you are internalizing, at least I can control this.
Mhm.
And some people become really, like, right afterwards. I don't know about what happened with you guys. I didn't even recognize that I became in my 20s like more hypersexual, not recognizing that I was trying to control,
Mm.
not realizing any of that, not recognizing that that's what it was. So the fact that you gave yourself away. Do you know, as I love about that too, as my therapist, she's so wise, she's amazing. And I was like, so why did my brain like forget stuff? She's like, because you have a really good brain.
Mm.
So when all the ways that we try to help ourselves, the way that you said, I want to train myself to get out of it, but you have a really good brain. You have a really good brain. Our brains froze because we have really good brains. That's why.
Yeah. In our last episode, we had a guest on, and he talked about how like he works in a child sexual assault center, and
Mhm.
he said they have a therapy bunny, and they have the therapy bunny because their fight, flight, and freeze is very like prominent. And so when the little kids are playing with it, it'll actually show those things. And then they can teach the kids why they responded in the ways they responded when they were being abused. And
Mhm.
I just thought that was so incredible because you're using an animal, right? Like something that is part of nature
Yes.
and showing that your responses are natural, right? They're innate. They're like a part of who we are because we are animals. And I
Yeah.
think we forget that sometimes. And we forget that these responses are part of nature. It's not something that's crazy. And I really love that because I think that is just such an amazing way to teach children, but also listening to that even taught me, like you could teach
Yep.
anyone with that. And I thought that was really, really cool.
I love that. Creating safety. What ways do we feel safe? Like, what do we need to actually feel safe? Those are important things that I think we don't talk about enough as adults or as children. It's not just about, well, what kind of material things do they need? No, does this child feel safe? Is this child safe? Because when they're safe, they're then cycling through their emotions in a normal way. I think that's what your generation is doing really differently too, is really understanding that, hey, actually, all of us have nervous systems. It's not just women. Men have nervous systems too. Like,
Right.
I think for a long time it was like, no, women are emotional, men are not, which we all know is such bullshit.
Right.
Because they can't take a no. So
Cute.
the idea that we all have nervous systems, we actually all have all this wide range of emotions. And I don't know if you guys experience this, but after sexual assault, and then for 27 years after, I had like three emotions. Like, I didn't realize I had like three emotions. And so what we're talking about a lot in trauma therapy is how to develop capacity for emotions, like a broad range, a rainbow of emotions, and even opposing emotions at the same time. And, that's how beautiful our nervous systems are. And men could get this too. Like, they could experience more than, three emotions.
Right. You had mentioned that you had moved to New York City and you had $50 in your pocket and you had this dream of becoming a professional dancer and you were actually doing it. You weren't just dreaming anymore. You were making that happen. And then you were raped at the age of 22. So you touched on it briefly, kind of the impacts of being raped at 22 and what that's like. But can you talk a little bit more about how that impacted your brain and how that impacted your ability to function as a professional dancer? I think a lot about how in your 20s, this is that time where we're all trying to launch, we're all trying to leave the house successfully and,
Yes.
have a career and, really truly figure out who we are. So for something this traumatic to happen to you at such a pivotal point in your life, can you explain how that impacted you?
Yes, and before I forget, I want to add in this one thing because it is, I love the way you worded it. This is when we're trying to launch.
Mhm.
And I think that there's something that happens for women between the ages of like when they turn 18 and are legal. There's like 18 to 25 or so before our prefrontal lobe is completely developed, that women should be protected,
Mm.
and it's not happening. And that ends up being such a high risk area for sexual harm. And it is devastating to our bodies, to our brains, to our relationships, to our career. So I just felt like that was something really important to come back to because, and I didn't think of that. Like I saw someone that commented like, there's this age range where women are just not protected anymore. Like at 18, it's almost as if like the hounds come in
Mhm.
and circle and we become prey. And that's a great concern to me because I know what it's like for my life to have been stunted. So I was very successful, and I started to say it like, this is the only time I'll name drop. Like, I worked for I had just finished a video with Aretha Franklin where I was one of her backup dancers. I had just worked with MC Hammer in Tokyo on a TV show. I had just finished filming where I was a lead dancer in an epic film being done by China and Japan, like the first time they'd actually worked together since the World War II. I had my face on a subway. I was modeling successfully, getting work, making money. And so for me, I had no fear. I believed in myself. I felt myself quite capable of being successful at this. because I had evidence. I had a year and a half of evidence, which only built up my confidence, right? There's a certain percentage of dancers that just fail, and there's this really small percentage of like, these are the quote unquote working dancers. And so I was in that category really fast.
Right.
And I was meeting incredible people. And when I was raped on July 9th, 1991, it was like my brain did a switch because I lost that trust in myself, because I lost my confidence in my ability to take care of myself. I lost my confidence in the ability to keep myself safe. So literally walking around in the world and feeling fearful of everything and assuming I will fail. And then recognizing, so within a year of the assault, so I had to leave New York. In fact, I had 2 weeks after I was assaulted, I had a modeling contract in Tokyo, and it was such a different experience. It was my second time in Tokyo, and it was just a horrific experience because I was so scared, and I couldn't even pinpoint why. It's not like, well, that happened over there, so now I'm really scared. But people don't understand is that we're not dots. Literally, neural pathways and dots do not connect. You just suddenly become this different person, and you don't know why. You can't connect it all. So I'm getting ready to leave Tokyo, and I say to a friend of mine, I'm scared to go back to New York. And when I said it, I couldn't even understand why I was saying, like, I didn't, that was an unfamiliar thought to me, because I love New York. I'd worked so hard to get to New York. New York was my dream. So to say to someone, I'm afraid to go back to New York, and not be able to articulate it, why, what I was afraid of. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to take care of myself, that I was going to be harmed again. Like there was a great fear of harm. So I had to leave New York. I got back to New York, and within 24 hours, I found a job outside the city. And I took my trajectory, went from, rising star to, I took a job in New Jersey working in a casino. Like my trajectory just went, boo.
Right.
And what happened after that was where the physical symptoms just really started to come out. So within 2 weeks after the assault, I broke out in this very bizarre hive-like acne. And the way I could see it in my brain now, looking back, it was like I so pushed down the experience that my body was like, no, look at me. And that's what the acne was like. Look at me, look at this body, like look what happened. And I was ignoring it. Within 3 months, like I had no ability. I struggled to sleep. I had insomnia. I was anxious all the time. And so I started to recognize that I was chasing safety, and I was becoming really numb. Within 3 months, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating right. I was having stomach aches all the time. I was sleeping all the time. My roommate, when I asked her recently, I said, what do you remember of me at the time? She's like, you were just so tiny and frail and sleeping all the time. And then I dropped down. I went shopping with a friend like 6 months later, and we were at the Gap. And I go to put on a pair of jeans, and I just could pull them off without unbuttoning them. And I laughed. I was like, ha ha ha, hey, Candace, look at this. It says size 0. And I could pull them down without unbuttoning them. And she looked at me and she goes, yeah, I was going to talk to you about that. She thought I had an eating disorder. And I was like, you eat with me every day. We're together every day. And it was related to how my body's inability to process food was actually, I related to my brain's inability to process what happened. So just like we get stressed and we get a stomach ache, I equate it the same way. Those repercussions of that led to me constantly chasing safety in relationships, which made me a very needy person, not recognizing. And I would float between needy and just rejecting, because I either needed them to cling on to me or I needed to get out of there as fast as possible. Like it only had two extremes. I tried to go back to New York twice, and both times I look back and I was like, I felt like I was self-sabotaging because of the anxiety, not recognizing, like the fear would come up in me. I had a Broadway director. I did a show at City Center. I had a Broadway director's assistant call me. You did such a great job at that show. We're putting this other show together. We could see you as the lead. Like, amazing. And we just were wondering why you weren't at the audition. And we're auditioning again. And he's willing to wait for you. Like, this is a Tony Award winning director willing to wait for me to get down there so he can cast me in a lead because he had directed a different show that I was in. And I sabotaged it. I was like, oh, I don't feel really well right now. Like it was so mousy. I was so mousy and so fearful. Then, yeah, I had to quit altogether. I went into teaching, found I loved it. But then my body, what I was saying earlier that people don't equate is when we hold on to trauma without it being empathetically witnessed. That's a Peter Levine quote. Like, trauma is when it's not empathetically witnessed. And I held on to it for so long. My body just started to fall apart to a point where by the time I was in my 40s, I was bedridden for 2 years. Like 70% of the waking hours in bed, able to do a couple of things a day. For me, right, it's a really big deal. Like it's a big deal to make my bed. I feel triumphant that I can make my bed now. Like I don't have to, like I used to stop making my bed because I was just in it all the time. It just seemed pointless. So I remember the day that I made my bed today because I'm not going to be in it 70 to 80% of the day. I could make it.
Right.
And so I'm really grateful. Like I live a really grateful life that I can make my bed. And I never want that to happen to anybody else.
Thank you, Jess.
Yeah,
Sharing all
thank
of
you.
that. With this sort of conversation of, the realm of your body being violated. And I don't know exactly what it is. I should have studied psychology because I would have gotten a lot more answers to the questions that I have, or maybe I should talk to a psychologist. But I do believe that there is some significant thing that happens and that changes when your own body is violated. It's very different than, like watching a car crash happen or seeing someone or,
Yes.
knowing someone that died. That's a very different type of traumatic event than it is for your own personal space to be violated. And I do believe that it impacts your decision-making process. I do believe that it impacts how you look at the world. But with all that being said, rather than sort of dwelling on the damage that was done to you, you had mentioned that, now you make your bed and it's not a small thing. And I do believe that in society, we should be recognizing that like making your bed is a big deal. Hell yeah, you got up today. That's a big deal. You made yourself breakfast. That's a big deal. So, how exactly did you get from being bedridden and, have experiencing all of this pain to being able to get up, pull your covers up, put your pillows in the place that they belong? How did you get from A to B? What did that look like? I guess your healing journey is what I'm really asking is how did that look?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for asking. And I want to really clarify something because I think this is where we've gone wrong in the generations since in understanding. And I know it's slowly becoming more mainstream. The understanding of it's called the neurobiology of trauma. So it's neurobiology. And that is different than what we have understood as psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, where it's all about if I just think differently, I can change everything. And that's a disconnect from the brain. It doesn't mean that that can't be helpful at times, but the neurobiology of trauma means we've taken into account the whole body. So when I say to you, it affected my digestion, I'm saying, and I'd like to explain this if it's okay. So the way I understand it and the way I've been taught it in my understanding of the neurobiology of trauma. So you have a traumatic experience and our adrenaline is supposed to course through our veins. That's what helps activate that fight and flight, right? Those are stress hormones. And then we need that cortisol to calm us down. That's what slows the adrenaline. right? So when adrenaline and cortisol are activated in a situation in sexual assault, if a lion is going to attack us, that's good that those stress hormones happen. When your system gets stuck, it means like I could cross the road, get within 20 feet of a car, but it startles me and all the same level of hormones activates, right? When that is happening over and over again for me for 27 years, that's the adrenal glands. And the adrenal glands are like the batteries to the body. So when I say it affected my digestion, when I was that sick, I was physically ill. This was a physical injury. And this is why I want to be really clear about it. I could not digest food. I couldn't eat lunch, have my food be digested and stay standing up. My body did not have enough battery power to do both. So the adrenal glands go, okay, we're so low on power. We have to focus it on digestion. So then all the other systems in the body get shut down. So when I say fatigue, people think I was just tired. I'm like, no, it's like the batteries run out.
Right.
And so I couldn't get out of bed, not because I was emotionally distraught. I did have days where I was emotionally incapacitated. Yes. But when I say I couldn't get out of bed, because there was no more juice in the batteries. And it was like my bones were carrying my muscles around. And I couldn't climb stairs. I would take a shower and have to take a nap afterwards because that's the amount of battery power I had. And so when we talk about a healing journey for people that have gone through trauma, I had to see not only am I dealing with my trauma therapist, I happen to have an incredible trauma therapist who knows trauma like deeply. I didn't mention I'm also from Sandy Hook, Connecticut, where the shooting happened, and I was living there when that happened. And so my trauma therapist is someone that dealt with Sandy Hook families. It was, I think, the only way I could trust her because I was like, okay, she knows shit. I'm not going to be traumatizing her, and she's going to know shit. So it took me a long time to find her. But I also found that just doing trauma therapy wasn't enough. I needed to deal with how off my adrenal glands were and rebuild my body. I actually had to rebuild my body from the inside. And so I have found an adrenal fatigue syndrome expert. He was a Western doctor who got adrenal fatigue as well. And so when he couldn't get help from Western medicine, he now developed this program. He's written like 5 books on it. He's a master of understanding this. And so it has taken me 7 years to get where I am right now. What's really so important to understand, and this is why any listeners that are listening that are survivors, when you have that adrenaline cortisol going through your body and it's going through your brain, it damages how you think. So there's not just the emotional, I need to find help. It's that you also have stress hormones going through your brain, creating a brain fog. Brain fog is real. Brain fog is so real that when I was at my sickest and I went into the kitchen to make a meal, I looked at a recipe and I couldn't decide, do I take the ingredients out first? Do I take the pots and pans out first? That's how far gone my brain was. And it was from stress hormones. That's it. And so when I say I want to help prevent people going through what I went through, this is what I'm talking about. That when we hold on to this trauma for a really long time, post-traumatic stress disorder is stress hormones coursing through all the time for no reason at all. Sometimes I'm anxious and I have no idea why. I will literally call a friend crying and go, I have no reason to be anxious right now, and I am anxious. I am freaking out right now for no reason. And it's because my body, it's the neurobiology of trauma. My stress hormones are still activating to a point now on my healing journey where I feel physically well. I can make my bed, and every time I do, I'm grateful. I can start a company that I've started. I can start to advocate. I'm still limited in my ability to do things. And sadly, I'm hoping this will change because I never give up. I am I am also exercise intolerant now, which means I can't dance anymore. And that is excruciating for me. So I'm still on my healing journey. I have worked really hard to get here. I've used lots of modalities. I've used EMDR, trauma therapy. Just because someone says in their bio that they are trauma aware or trauma informed does not mean they understand trauma. It's a totally different thing. There needs to be someone that you're talking to that understands the neurobiology, how it affects your whole body. I'm working with Dr. Lamb, who is the man that is the adrenal fatigue expert. I've done breath work. I've done Reiki. I do yoga, but I have to do more yin yoga. I can't do things that activate, like I can't get my heart racing at all. I can't do anything. Like if I go for a walk right now, my heart hits 120 right away because it is habitually been trained to do that. So I have a lot of work ahead of me. I'm 55. I'm still not giving up. I'm getting back to dancing. So
We believe
yeah.
in you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's amazing.
That's going to be part of the healing journey. That is next, is how do I heal this body to the degree that I can dance again?
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that conversation about heart rate is really interesting. I wear a Garmin watch. And so it tracks your heart rate every time you have it on, right? And you can like check the app on your phone that shows you like what it's at when you're sleeping, what it's at like literally throughout the entire day, as long as you're wearing it. And my heart rate is so high all the time. Like, and I've always just thought, oh, like, whatever, that's fine. But now after hearing you talk about that, I wonder if that has to do with like anxiety that's been induced by trauma, because
Yes.
like I would be like, oh haha, like my heart rate's at 130 right now. And I'm just like walking, and like I exercise like every day. Like I think that I'm in pretty good shape. And so that's always been so weird for me. And everyone around me is like, that's like not normal. And I'm like, oh, LOL.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting. And I'm definitely going to look more into that after
So
this episode.
what I will tell you is what happens in our bodies. So your system is a little bit stuck. And even though you're healthy, like I still danced, and I taught classes for a long time. The body doesn't understand. Once it gets stuck, it doesn't differentiate between the difference between good stress and bad stress. And so all it says is lion chasing me, and sends those, and it can even feel good. I actually think that after I was raped, and I think I became a bit of an adrenaline junkie. Like I think you can get addicted to that sense of the intensity, and you get used to a certain level of energy course. Again, it's the batteries, those batteries. So I thought that was good. I thought when I felt those highs, that adrenaline, I thought that was normal, and it's not. So what happens is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system are not balanced. That's that part of your nervous system which activates the heart rate. And so it's great that you're exercising, but we want to counteract. So that's why I have to do yin yoga. I meditate. I do breath work. Teaching my body to activate the parasympathetic nervous system is part of my healing journey. The more I can train my body that it can calm down and feel safe. So now what we're doing, Lauren, is we're training our bodies to feel safe. We have to train them to feel safe. And because you lived for a long time, I mean, you went through a trial too, that leaves you in that heightened stress for a long time. And that is what a lot of people now call it post-traumatic stress injury. And I'm in that camp because I don't have a disorder. I'm not disordered.
Right.
I was fucking injured.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We were injured. And it's people think of it as only the event, and they don't recognize. And you said this, Shannon, you said, it's very different when it violates your body, and it is, because it crosses. I mean, think how uncomfortable it is If you're standing, you were standing on a street corner, and some man, all he does is stand uncomfortably close.
Right.
He hasn't even touched you, but he's in your space. We all have a sense of what our personal space is. So our bodies feel that. He doesn't have to be touching me. And our bodies feel it and have a reaction. To ignore that our bodies have a reaction to this is the part that's been ignored for generations.
And also, I mean, maybe you know more about this, Jess. I'm thinking about, you mentioned that this generational concept. And I read the body, like the body keeps
I
score.
keep the score.
Trauma, like, doesn't it impact your DNA, and like generationally, there can be huge impacts. And so the healing that you can do for yourself, it's not only for you, but I also think about it, it's for like your future children. It's for your children's children. And I don't know if, sometimes it's important to be selfish, but if you can't heal for yourself, then heal for that, right?
Yeah. I will tell you, you have a really good question in here. You said, can you talk about your healing journey and frustrations felt within it? And so you said, heal not just for yourself, but for others, right? Like for next generations, break the silence. I will tell you that everyone thinks that me talking now is brave. And that's not the brave part.
Mm.
The brave part was sitting with my therapist and looking at the terrors that would come up in me, sitting by myself for hours, sobbing, being willing to feel the terror, the things that raised the hairs on the back of my neck, and look at them.
Right.
Nobody saw those parts. Nobody. That was harder, to continually over and over again be willing to look at the things that I wasn't willing, not even willing, but my body doesn't reveal until you feel safe. So it's like increments. Like once you feel a little bit safe, then you can explore more of those really uncomfortable feelings. And then you feel a little bit safe. That's why it's like an onion, right? The thing I didn't understand, and this is going to be an ongoing thing. And again, part of why my mission to me is so important. I didn't understand the grief I would feel at the 30 years I lost. And the way I had explained it on a podcast once, and even with my lawyers when I wrote my victim impact statement, and it's the part that's still hard right now, is like a part of me went to sleep at 22. The intimate part, the sensual part, the person that connects with other people in that way. And I woke up in fucking menopause and lost all of that time of ever developing, like that growth. You had said it earlier too, Shannon, like that growth time that we are getting ready to launch and become women in the world, powerful women in the world, doing our work, whatever that work is. From being moms to being corporate baddies to being dancers to being artists, whatever it is we want to do. And it was stunted. It affected my relationships, my career, my friendships, my ability to connect with other humans for 30 years. So the grief of that loss is immeasurable.
It is just, I think for like all survivors, I think we can underappreciate the little steps that we have taken to get to where we are today. And I think we've all done this, right? Like you talk about taking that time to feel. And that might sound just like, so like, oh yeah, like whatever to some people who maybe haven't experienced just trauma or any like hardships. But I'd say for people that have been through shit, getting to a place where you can just sit in your feelings, it is just, it's so hard. And like, I know everyone in this conversation, everyone listening has really experienced that, right? And I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for that. I don't think we, and like both of you have said earlier in this conversation, like we oftentimes don't take a second to look at how far we've come and even look at those little moments that maybe can get overlooked. And so I think it's so amazing that you can sit here now and be like, I was able to do this. I'm continuing to do this. I know the areas that I still need to grow in and heal in. And I think it's really amazing that you've taken the time to reveal that for yourself. Cause I know that like I need to be better at that. And like sometimes I'm like, oh, like I'm having a bad day. What's wrong with me? Like I
Yes,
just get over
yes.
it.
Yeah. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
All the time we say, what's wrong with me? Rather than just listening to the wisdom that's like our body telling us something, you know? Yeah. And thank you for saying that, because how many times, let me ask you guys, how many times do you gaslight yourself on your emotions, how you're feeling?
Every day.
A lot.
Every
Yeah.
day. We
Yeah.
gaslight ourselves because that's what we see. We can still live in that. I'm supposed to be this. I should be this. I shouldn't feel this. And I think if we could erase any words from the human vocabulary, it would be supposed to, should, and shouldn't. And that if we were to really eclipse, like when I'm talking like top level wisdom, if we really embraced the idea of judge and assume nothing, judge nothing, assume nothing, stay curious, like even like internalize that for ourselves. Like I cannot tell you what a big deal it was. There was a moment where was beginning to have a panic attack. And in the panic attack, so when you've been through it, so like, I don't know if you've experienced this, Lauren and Shannon, but like for me, because my body shuts down, I can have the anxiety and then boom, I'm in bed incapacitated, not physically. Like I can't, sometimes I now can't judge. And that's actually part of my journey is, wait, is this emotional? Am I in a freeze response? Or have I drained all my batteries? That's part of my work now. Sometimes it's just that I've drained all my batteries and I need to rest. And other times it's I'm in freeze and I need to jump around and get my body out of freeze. Like it's two different things happening. The connection between people understanding that that event is one thing. So look at it this way. If you break your leg, that's one injury. If you don't get attention for that broken leg, it is detrimental to the rest of your life. It is an infection, it is a wonky step, which then affects the rest of your, it's the same thing. There's the event that happened, and then there's no trauma response that is safe, supportive, and trustworthy. In like, we know this in trauma experts know this, like there is this window of time between the first 24 hours to 3 months that if you surround a trauma survivor in safety, trust, and support, their nervous system calms down. The stress hormones stop cycling. The heart rate learns to calm. And then the body can go through its natural healing process. Do you notice there aren't animals out there? There aren't animals out there with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh.
Because they know how to shake it out. You know how they shake and they calm themselves down. They're surrounded, you know, when a predator comes in and somebody escapes that, like then they go back into their pack and they're safe. We don't have that. We don't have packs after something like this happens. That's what I'm doing. I'm creating packs. I'm creating a sexual assault first aid plan that people can do so that we heal just the same way the animals do. We there's the event and then there's the injury that happens long term. And we need to stop that cycle.
That's a perfect segue because, you know, this whole conversation you've been talking about your work and advocacy and this, you know, idea that you don't want anyone to experience this, you know, it's just so traumatic and you want to be able to help be in this awareness and prevention kind of fight, right? And so I think this would be a great time to transition into the work you're doing, you know, 3 Jones and the safer, like the first aid. It's just all so amazing. And I think we would all love to hear you talk about it.
Thank you. You know, I really have found a great deal of healing also in finding purpose. That has been a tremendously helpful part of my healing journey. It's what gets me up out of bed every day, like excited about knowing that somehow I can use this shit show uh, and really change it, make a difference. So it's three Joannes, and it's Joanne because it's named after the first person I told and the first person who believed me. It's three because we say whether we're survivors or helpers, we never do this alone again. And it's first aid, sexual assault first aid, because we believe it's an injury first before it's a crime. Like, and we need to start treating it like the injury that it is, the trauma injury first. And unfortunately, that's just not how life has been. We judge it whether it's an injury based on legal definitions, and that doesn't equate to how it injures our nervous system. Our nervous system is not taken into account in the court of law. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't take into account how our brain disconnects. You know, you brought up the body keeps the score. And the reason why that book was so impactful to me is there's a page, and I share it every time I talk about neurobiology, geeky stuff. Page 43, where he talks about how they took trauma survivors and they put them into brain scans and they had them talk about their trauma. And what they found that they didn't expect is that the same area of the brain that gets injured from a stroke, that has abrasions on it, that causes a stroke victim to not be able to speak, is the same thing that happens in trauma survivor, the same area of the brain where they had physical evidence that trauma causes physical damage. Mm-hmm. And so when I started to think about this issue of sexual assault, I noticed everybody is so focused on prevention, which is really important, really important. But the volume of survivors is insane, right? Absolutely insane. And nobody's talking about, but we have no plans for these people that have all gone through sexual harm. Like, there's no protocol, no set protocol of what do we do. We know 911 if there's an emergency. We know stop, drop, and roll if we catch fire. And I did the math. Like, a child is more likely to experience sexual harm by 117 times than to ever catch fire. And we have nothing, we have no stop, drop, and roll for sexual harm, not for parents, not for young people. So I thought, okay, if I don't want to, like, there are plenty of people doing the prevention thing, and there are things that are working, and there are amazing things out there. What did I wish I could change? And I said, I wish I could change the moment when I turned it all in on myself and didn't get help and support because I didn't think I deserved it, because I thought it was my fault. How do I change that moment and get support? And then I remembered Sandy Hook, and I was like, we all knew the week after the shooting the kids were going to be wonky, like, and we could all, I developed a level of acceptance for people's things after Sandy Hook. Like, their behaviors were going to change. That, you know, experts told us, they're like, expect anything, like anything and everything. I saw a child completely change personalities, go from being mousy and quiet to suddenly they were really assertive in class and making eye contact. Like, it was bizarre. And it was because we all knew. It wasn't a secret, right? And the difference is that we internalize it and we blame ourselves. So I said, why can't we have a community response? Like, why can't we plan something in advance? Like, and just talk about it, like, have language that's really simple, and treat it like an injury so that it is first aid. That's addressing, like, we just call it first aid. So interestingly enough, I had a book on my bookshelf, and as I was thinking about this, I looked down and it said Psychological First Aid, and it's written by the St. Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. And I was like, wow, look at this. There's actually a psychological first aid book that maybe I can adapt. I'll just go in and see what they say about sexual assault. Do you know that the two gentlemen professors that wrote this book did not include sexual assault in psychological first aid? It wasn't considered a trauma. So I actually wrote something. I decided to take their class, their free class online, and they had a group there. And I wrote something, and I said, as an Epstein survivor who is dealing with years of trauma, I can tell you, you've really missed the mark on your book. not talking about sexual assault first aid. And so, or psychological first aid for sexual assault survivors. And so I had seen like a year later, they had come out with a new edit. And I was like, oh, good, there's going to be a new edit. They added like half a paragraph about it.
Well, we don't need more than that, you know? We just,
Right?
yeah. Who
Crazy.
And they
cares
said
about?
this may happen, and DV and SV and gendered violence may cause this, and not anything else. So I was like, okay, no one has any sexual assault first aid skills. If you go to every nonprofit that works on prevention, they have the here's some things you can do afterwards. But you have to go searching for that stuff, and you cannot do it when you're traumatized. And the people around you, even if you do have a trusted friend, is traumatized too. They're going through their own vicarious trauma of knowing that someone they care about is harmed. So what we've done, my team and I now have a trauma expert who lives not far from you guys.
Yeah.
And I have a learning designer from the Harvard School of Public Health, Graduate School of Public Health. We've taken my idea of how do we create a community response with a plan of action in advance that is palatable, that we can talk about in advance without going into all the scary stats and traumatizing ourselves. How do we talk about this in a way that at least says we surround a survivor in support within those first 24 hours? So we've created also, in addition to a protocol plan in advance, a 3-month care plan. Like, here's what we can do. You can do it as a survivor. You can do it as friends. We need to look at this as just like any other injury. If your friend broke their leg, you would not need to talk about every detail of the accident to soothe them with their broken leg. You would say, hey, want to watch a movie? I'll bring over a pizza, right? You care for them. You make them feel safe. You support them. You make them know, you help them know that they are not alone in this. You're holding their hand as you Google therapists for them. You're holding their hand in the hospital so they don't have to go alone. Julia, who's my trauma expert, is a rape crisis counselor on the weekends in hospitals. 80% of victims come in alone. I spoke to a SANE nurse who is a trainer in as a forensic nurse examiner. He trains other forensic nurse examiners. He said, Jessica, I think it's closer to 90% of survivors go to the hospital alone, if they go at all. And so what we've done is we've compiled all the information. We're saying, here's some really quick, easy things you can know to do and know about beforehand so that you have a 911 number to call specifically for this issue. You know who to call to get an advocate. You know where to go. You know what hospital to go to because they have forensic nurses. Here's a way for you to communicate, because I don't know about you guys, but I couldn't, my speech was impaired. I could barely talk about it. So I say we create a secret emoji. So if you guys are like my 3Js, because we call the sexual assault first aid kit app is called 3Js, because it could be a man, it could be non-binary, it could be trans folks. It doesn't matter. Like, we're 3Js. And we create together an emoji that's our 911 emoji to each other, right? So we create something that's really impactful. Like, I picked red balloon because red balloon has positive connotations for me. So it's scary. It's also red. So it's a good emergency thing. But I'm also knowing it's positive because I have your support. I send that to you. You commit to saying within 24 hours, I'm going to show up at your door. And you don't have to tell me anything, but you're just telling me you need help. And then we have the list of like the checklist of this is what we do next.
That's amazing.
I really like this idea of treating it like an injury, because that's what it is. And I do believe that that's something that people who don't understand or just can't comprehend the magnitude of the impacts of sexual assault, I do believe that they could understand, okay, let me think about it like an injury. If I had broke my leg, what would I do next? And this idea of 3 Joannes, I think, is going to help so many people. And I can't wait to see it, like in full form, and to hear all of the amazing stories of people who will say, I was sexually assaulted and that was horrible, but I didn't experience PTSD because I was able to have that plan of
Exactly.
people around me. And
Yep.
it will be
Yep.
because of you thinking about this aftermath, right? And I think
Yeah.
that that is so beautiful and you're going to help so many people.
I think that's one of the myths I want to bust too, is that we can't heal from this.
Mm,
I think that it was, oh, that's the one thing you can never heal from. And part of the reason we never healed from it was because you looked at the way you looked at me and said that mirrored my shame back.
right.
And now we're just saying, nope, it's just like any other injury. It's like a broken leg, you sprained your ankle. We know rest, ice, compression, elevation is exactly like that. And that's how we're going to treat it.
Mm,
I don't even care. Like, don't even tell me the legal definition. I don't care.
right.
Because you guys know too, from people, other survivors, I'm sure you've talked to, like, what could be sexually harmful to me? To someone else might be like, oh yeah, that was a really shitty experience, and ugh, yeah, that'll never happen again. It's not going to be a big deal to someone else. So it's also how we internalize it.
And that probably impacts our healing journey as well. Yeah.
100%.
So you kind of talked about how there is, like, we can find visual evidence in our brain on how trauma changes it. And that is not used in the court of law. Do you think that we could get to a place, though, where those things could be used?
I don't know. I can't comment on that. But what
Okay.
I will tell you and what I believe could happen, could you imagine a world where sexual assault survivors got the support they needed first?
Mhm.
Had, three people walking into a police station with an already written out, like somebody wrote down all this stuff for them so they didn't have to keep repeating it. Nervous system safe for those first 3 months afterwards, so that we can actually remember all the details well and in an order that makes sense. And we're actually able to speak in a way that people hear us. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that we calm the nervous system enough that we can get support, but also think about this. Like, if I was standing in a room, because I do a lot of speaking, and if I'm speaking to men and I say, guess what? 3 people are going to know about any shitty behavior, so you better watch out. I think we're also proactively preventing, like we're no longer looking at this as just something so scary we don't have support for, so shameful on us. We're looking at you. And I now have people that believe me and are going to support me, and we're already ready to deal with any injury that happens. So I'm not afraid of you. I think that all automatically also changes how, like you said when you did jujitsu, if you go through and do the activities in our 3 steps, people, pact, and plan, at the end of that, what we're hoping is you go, oh, so this can happen, this can activate automatic, the awareness of that, I am also hoping, will change how our bodies respond.
Mm,
Maybe we do fight more, I don't know, but I think that the goal would be we never have to use brain scans.
Yeah. Amen to that. I think that's really amazing. And yeah, I think I more asked that question as like a right now in the place we are at,
Yeah,
being
we
able to
should.
have that evidence, visual evidence to be
Yeah.
like, as a lawyer, whatever, having a psychologist be like, so this is how the brain changed when this person here was traumatized. And so people can then see that and go, oh shit, like this isn't some, made up story or whatever they're thinking, or like this isn't, even for people who think that like sexual assault doesn't impact you or isn't a big deal, can
Yep.
actually have something to look at, because I know people like that, right? Like so
Yes.
many issues we do not face because we cannot see them, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm an environmental major, and
Yep.
that's so frustrating because people don't want to take action because you cannot see
Yeah.
directly climate change or like whatever it is. And so people don't do shit about it. And I think it's the same with sexual assault. Like if
Yeah.
you could have a visual, which is unfortunate, it shouldn't be like this, but where we are right now, if people could see something and be like, oh, that is how this impacted their brain. Like this is real. This is a problem. I just like wonder how that
I
would
think it
impact.
would be huge. I think that that would be a huge step in progress. And because I do think that what I'm talking about creating this, 3J sexual assault first aid kit app, I think it's going to take a generation or two for it to become the norm. I'm not expecting this to fix anything overnight. So we have a generation or two of people that are going to be sexually assaulted and harmed and traumatized. So how cool would it be if part of, rather than just sitting in front of an expert, if they ask those questions while you're in a brain scan and see how it affects your brain when you talk about it? Because you can't make that, you can't make your neural pathways go somewhere.
Like
The
you can't,
future.
like in a lie detector test, you can like
Yeah.
finagle your way out of it.
Right. But if they're actually
Not a
looking
person
at
can.
what area of the brain is activated when you are talking about this incident, why is that not done? Bessel van der Kolk's book was written like 2006,
Mm.
something like that, 2007. And look how much that has not been used. I mean, that information, and it was revived during the pandemic. So why aren't we doing that?
It's crazy to me. I think that's like the point of having these conversations, right? Is that people hear this and they're like, well, okay, like this is something we need to be talking about, and this is something we need to like put into action. And I think that and then the app can not only create that direct change, but also can create a conversation, to even like put yourself into that situation and think, well, like if I had that after I was assaulted, where would I be right now?
And
Maybe,
if we had it before we were assaulted, like
yeah,
if we had a plan, like to know, like, hey, girl, I got you.
Right.
We're heading, what if it was something, this is the way we're seeing it too. Like, what if it was something like parents were like, okay, we got to buy you a bedspread, we got to get you a bookshelf, we've got to get you a desk, and we're going to get you this app here to protect you. You can form a little group with your people that you feel safe with. Um, and at least know you can invite me to that group. You don't have to, but I've bought it for you. You've got it so that you know what to do if something happens to you, or you can be that hero for somebody else. Like my daughter, I want her to be the hero for somebody else.
Mm.
Don't even look at it like it's for you. Don't even look at it like, this is going to happen to you. We really framed it as like, how can I be a better helper to somebody else that's going through this?
yeah, and you're creating your pack.
Yeah. So I hope that there's somebody that's listening, that they are going into like medical tech stuff, and maybe they will be the ones to create this system for testing sexual assault survivors. Because you had a question for me earlier, like, why does everybody think this is a joke? Why, people that don't understand what happens? It's because they don't understand the neurobiology of the brain. But in their defense, the Supreme Court and lawyers that are experts in this don't understand it. I will tell you, I was speaking with a woman from an international sexual violence organization
Mhm.
and explained to her about this being an injury. She's like, oh, we've never really thought about it that way before. Because
Mhm.
we didn't understand trauma. To her credit, like, we didn't understand how trauma, like the neurobiology of it. That's why not all men, I'm going to say this and it's going to be controversial. So, like, warning, don't come at me. Not all therapists are good therapists. Not all mental health professionals understand trauma.
Right.
It's why when people have said in the past, oh, I tried therapy and it just made it worse. I had a bad experience. I had a bad experience with EMDR.
Really?
And that's even a trauma-informed therapy. So you really have to be careful of, and actually that's one of the things I'm the queen of. Like, I, as an advocate, like, I've had people reach out and they're like, how do I find a therapist? I was like, I got you. Tell me where you live. Like, I help people find trauma therapists. So you can message me on Instagram, tell me that's what you need. I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to talk through stuff with you. I'll be there for you. Hey, I'm cheering you on, but I can find you a good therapist. I can give you a list. That's my thing.
Hey,
That's my
might need
advocacy.
We might be emailing you after this. I don't know about you, Lauren. I have a therapist, but I think it's time for a new one. So I'll be DMing
Yeah.
you later, Jess.
I'm your girl. I'm your girl. Anybody that's listening to this, that's a survivor and struggling to figure out why they're not feeling better.
Mm.
There's a reason why you are not going through growth. And I'm going to tell you, it's a lack of safety and a lack of trust.
I think we're going to try to wrap this up a little bit. Before we do, I wanted to just give you an opportunity. Like, if you have anything you would like to say to survivors, advice, comments, question, like literally anything. Yeah, this is your moment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So we are working super hard on 3J's sexual assault first aid kit app. My goal is to do kind of a soft launch of it during April 2024, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And we're literally going for just traction. Who would actually download this? Would you actually go through the plan? We're looking for feedback from college students. So that's one thing. But I am a big supporter of Callisto. Callisto has cutting edge technology that doesn't exist. I'm actually wearing their sweatshirt right now. It says, "You are not alone." They're doing something, and this is why we're partnering with them. We believe technology can really change this issue. And so I would like to let anyone that has an .edu email address, and that doesn't matter whether you're a professor, whether you're an admin, staff, student, you can access Callisto's cutting edge technology, where you could put an encrypted report that happened, of something that happened. You can hold someone's hand and bring them to Callisto. Like, you can help somebody find Callisto that you know has been assaulted. But the really amazing thing that they're doing that nobody else is doing, and it's what you were saying about proof, I think this may be the only way we can start proving that this is true, Lauren, that we're actually not losing our minds. If you are a survivor with a .edu email address, you can go to Callisto's matching system, enter in any kind of identifying information like social media, phone number, email address of the person that assaulted you, because 9 times out of 10, we know who it is. And we can find out their name, especially when it's in a college setting. And if anyone else, and it's anonymous, like you go in, but your information is completely anonymous. If anyone else is assaulted by that same person, those two anonymous people are brought together by a legal options counselor, where that legal options counselor tells you, talks about Title IX, talks about therapeutic options, talks about legal options, because I am a firm believer in civil suits as restorative justice. A lot of things are, and Tracy, CEO Callisto, said this to me, she got it from a book, things are awful but lawful, like you can't prove them. And so doing a civil suit for the damages, this is why proving like this is an injury is so important, because there is damage done. There is damage done to a life cut short, career trajectory cut short, ability to have relationships cut short, and that has a restitution component to it. And so I believe in restorative justice, even over some criminal justice stuff. Like, let's start letting people know that they've caused an injury and it caused harm and it deserves to be taken care of, like a car accident, anything else. And so with Callisto, you can do that. 2 people can be matched. And because Callisto is now nationwide, it can be anywhere in the country. So somebody could have been on spring break in Fort Lauderdale, been assaulted, and they actually go to, a school in Chicago, and this person goes to a school in Massachusetts. And the assault happened in a different state, you can still be connected. So there are solutions out there right now that are incredible. End Rape on Campus. End Rape on Campus has a mapping tool, and you can go to End Rape on Campus and find out everything you need to know about how to get support at your college. They've done all that research. So there are solutions that are out there, and we are hoping to line in right with all of them and synergistically help support this, because I don't think it's any one thing. I think it's going to take all of us. I think it's taking your voices and your platform. I think it's taking new technology. That's what I want to add with. I believe that it's going to take all of us coming together in all of our different ways to solve this.
one of the biggest reasons that Laura and I started this podcast was because we felt like we didn't have any resources when we were going through the court process and after we were assaulted. And you're letting people know there are resources out there. We are creating them. And, it would be great to have had them 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not where we were at.
Yeah.
But, you're one of those people bringing these resources to the light. We will link all of your information and Three Joanne's down below and,
Yeah.
Callisto's information, everybody's information in the bio. So if anybody's listening to this and you're like, I need a therapist, I need to DM Jess Michaels, it'll all be in the description below.
And don't hesitate. Like, seriously, I got you. You're not alone in dealing with this. I would gladly help because it's hard.
You're amazing, Jess. Thank you so much for being a part of our podcast and for taking the time today to talk to us and talk to all of our listeners who I know are going to get so much out of this episode. You're just an amazing advocate for the community. You're creating real change and you're the exact type of person that we love talking to, and it's such an honor to meet people who went through this but are doing something about it and doing something to change other people's experiences with this. I think we speak for so many people when I say that your work, your courage, the person that you are, you embody something that is so inspiring and brilliant. And although it came from this really awful, fucked up experience, you are making a difference. And I think you know that, but we just want to remind you today.
Thank you. That means the world to me.
We are such a big, we're a part of your fan club. We love you. And it feels so weird to end this. I feel like we could just keep going forever.
Well, hopefully you'll have me back. Like when we're, I'd like to invite myself back. This is just the beginning, hopefully, of our relationship.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Already there.
Yeah.
On the calendar.
Thank you.
On the calendar, yeah. We got that too.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We love you all so much, and I hope that you have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you on the flip side, and cheers.
Cheers.